Patriots Playbook, where legends are born. John Rook brings the heat, rain or storm. From Brady's throws to new stars rising, the playbook's open, it's so mesmerizing. Enter the playbook, Patriots Playbook. Here's your host, John Rook, legend, voice of the New England Patriots. First down, it's Patriots Playbook, la la la.
It's bye week, which means, of course, there's no game to talk about. But that doesn't mean we don't have playbook. That doesn't mean that we're not doing stuff in here today. And we are doing stuff in here today. We welcome you into the program. I am John Rook. That version's growing on me, Maureen. It's growing on me a little bit. Does that have a little, I don't know. I'm not really good with my country and western stars, but does that have a little Jason Aldean to it? I don't know.
I don't know.
Do you know, Evan?
I like Johnny Cash, I guess.
Johnny Cash?
Got a little twang to it.
Yeah, it's got a little twang, but I'm just like...
I'm not a country guy either. I just bought my Kendrick Lamar tickets earlier. I don't know.
Did you really?
Oh, yeah, as soon as they went on sale. Didn't even ask the missus. I texted her. I was like, I bought tickets to
Should
Kendrick
I buy
Lamar.
tickets?
Well, nope, didn't even ask.
No, didn't. Yeah,
No,
okay.
wasn't.
Right.
This is a non-negotiable.
Well, at least you recognize that.
Yeah.
And so you earn an A for recognition
Yeah.
in that regard.
Yeah,
right?
there's a few artists that if they come here, it's non-negotiable, and he's on the list.
Well, I was that way with the Rolling Stones this summer.
That's fair.
Yeah. I mean, you know, I mean, far be it from me to want to watch, three 80-year-olds get up on stage and rock. But they were dynamic.
Yeah, no, I've heard them. I've never been to one of their concerts, but we are lucky that we sometimes get to hear the sound checks.
Yeah.
And I was like, wow, these guys, they still rock, man.
Got it.
Yeah.
So I was really thrilled with that. I thought that was actually money well spent, especially since it's their quote-unquote farewell tour.
Yeah.
And anybody that says it's a farewell tour, I'm doing. I did Electric Light Orchestra, ELO, at the TD Garden in the fall, back in September. It was magnificent.
Yeah.
Magnificent. Of course, now we're definitely aging myself here because they were big when I was in high school back in the 70s. And but Jeff Lynne, Traveling Wilburys, for those of you who might be of a little later generation, he was a part of that group, in the 90s before everybody started, passing away. But he was fabulous. Absolutely I mean, first of all, didn't even look like he aged. He had gray hair. I don't know if I couldn't tell from where I was sitting if it was hair dye or he just takes care of himself well.
Yeah.
Which is sort of an anomaly, I think, for most rock stars. Unless, of course, you're Keith Richards, who clearly has a deal with the devil, one or the other.
That's
right?
fair. Yeah, my father is a really big Bee Gees fan, like massive. And so we went and saw Barry Gibb still performs.
Oh, wow.
Like,
see, now I would have done that. I would have totally done that.
Yeah, so my whole family went for his birthday because he's just the biggest Bee Gees fan on the planet. And Barry Gibb brought the house down.
I believe it. I
75.
Totally,
I was
that's really
shocked.
Cool. I'm not gonna lie. I think that's cool.
Yeah,
it
was
it is
awesome.
cool. It's totally cool. Besides, when the Bee Gees were popular in the 70s,
yeah.
Oh man, chicks dug the Bee Gees. So if you wanted to date and other things,
Nice
you had to be on the dance floor with the Bee Gees. Am I lying to anybody here? No.
I can't be my father's son and say I'm not a Bee Gees fan. So
okay.
I know a lot of their songs just from being in the car with him, as a kid. So it was a great concert.
Yeah. I think that's fabulous.
Yeah.
So anytime I get a chance to hear a group from that era, 70s, 80s, and even a little bit into the 90s, I got to go. I mean, I have to go. I have to admit that, I know we're completely starting off, the tangent here, but at the same time, it's bye week, okay? So give us a break here for just a second. Then we'll talk into all stuff.
It's football, right?
Yeah, I know it's football.
Yeah.
It's still football season.
Yeah.
I'd probably now I've had a senior moment. I forgot what the hell I was going to say.
Something about concerts.
Something about concerts. What was I going to say about concerts? Can you read my
I think
mind?
you were going back to Kendrick Lamar.
Tell me what I'm thinking right now, Marine. Okay.
You're thinking you want Eminem here in 2026.
No.
There's people in this building, Marine. I won't name names, but every once in a while he comes in the studio and does a Madden sim with you every once in a while that thinks that Drake won the rap beef between him and Kendrick Lamar, which is just That's a spicy hot take.
Wow.
That's an incorrect take.
Oh, we work with idiots.
I didn't call him that.
All right. Okay, we'll move on. Hey, Patriots fans, you want to see Toyota's best offers, including those not seen on TV, go to buyatoyota.com. It's Toyota's official website for deals from the official vehicle of the New England Patriots. Toyota, let's go places. Where are we going to go today? Well, besides Evan, of course, being here, Russell Baxter will join us at the at the second half of the hour number 2. Karen Guregian, who longtime Patriots writer and columnist now with MassLive.com. She'll join us in about an hour. We're also going to hear from Matt St. Jean. He's one of the hosts for the Pats Nation podcast on CLNS, also a writer for Pat's Pulpit, so you've probably seen his work. I know Matt, good young kid. He's a Providence College graduate, so how bad can he be, right? But he is really up on his football. I think he's very engaging. I enjoy his work, and we thought we'd also take a little bit of time here during the bye week to hear from some of the others that cover the team besides what we would call mainstream media, because I think there's a lot of good takes out there. And one of the things that I want to really ask everybody today, all right, is I want you to come up with 3 things at this juncture, because I know we're all disappointed. You can't not be a fan and not be disappointed at 3-10. I thought this team was better than 4-13 a year ago. It looks like they're going to be really hard pressed to even reach 4-13, much less beat it. I thought this was a 5 or a 6 win team this year. Looks like I'm going to miss that mark by just a little bit. So, in light of not meeting even our lower end expectations. Okay, I want you, and I'll ask you about it in a second, but I want really listeners today to identify one good thing they like, okay? One good thing you like about the way this team is headed, a player, a coach, whatever it might be, one good thing. I want you to identify one bad thing. We're going to go, old Western movies here. One good, one bad, and one ugly. Okay? So I need a good one, I need a bad one, and I need an ugly.
Wild card, bitches!
Exactly. What was the movie? What was the movie where the cheerleaders did the chant? U-G-L-Y, you ain't got no alibi, you ugly.
Oh, man.
Your mama say you ugly.
Bring It On?
Yeah. Was it Bring It On?
I think so.
Yeah. Was that what it was? Yeah.
If I didn't get that, I
would have said it a second later.
Yeah, you can't be my age and not know the answer to that question.
We used to do that chant in high school and college. The cheer has been around forever. But when I was watching the game, all right, this past weekend and calling the game this past weekend and sitting there just, cringing because I knew when the Colts were halfway through that 19-play drive, I just said, I looked over at Miss Robin, who spots for me in the booth, and I looked over at Coop, who's the audio 2 in the booth, who comes in and sits with us for about the last, half of the last quarter before postgame gets started. And I look at both of them, I said, they're going to score, aren't they? Touchdown, right? 2 points, right? Yeah, they're going to score, right? They both said, uh-huh. Uh-huh. We felt it coming.
Yeah.
We felt it coming. You just knew it was going to happen because you had no confidence and no faith that this team would be able to find a way. And that really is why this team is 3-10. I still think there's some talent here, okay? Not enough, and I think we can all agree on that. We've been talking about that all season long. There's some talent here. But that talent is not able to break through, and there are probably a couple of significant reasons why the talent that's here is not able to get through. And frankly, it starts with coaching, and it starts with mentoring, and it starts with attention to detail. It starts with discipline. It's all that stuff that coaches are largely responsible for. Now, I don't put a lot of the blame at the coach's feet because I think, first of all, this is professional football. We should be past the teaching stage. And the basic concepts of what to do and what not to do should have already been taught. And if they're not taught and they're not getting through, like Vidarian low holding and jumping off sides, and I mean, guys, if you can't figure it out, there's the unemployment line. We're going to pull somebody else in here. Now, invariably, that'll likely happen in the offseason for a lot of these guys. But my issue is that it shouldn't be happening now. Why am I getting a call from Utah? I'm getting.
Why are you looking at me?
No, I don't. I don't
Said
know.
the
Well,
unemployment line, I thought
now,
maybe that was
we
different.
played somebody from Utah last night at the Amp, right? Oh, I hope I didn't insult anybody. Did you hear what the Providence students were doing last night? Did you hear those cheers? Did you hear those chants?
No, I didn't.
I didn't either because I had headsets on. I didn't hear. But they were not being kind to Mormons. I know.
That's a very kind way of saying that.
No, I mean, I'm just like, first of all, consider the landscape. You're in a sold-out building. You got an 8:30 start, so fans and students have had a chance to get lubed. Okay, a little lubed up. Lots of tall boys being sold, right? So hey, some people just aren't as mature as others. Is what I can tell you. I wasn't as mature when I was 20 as I am now. I wouldn't say I'm very mature at all anyway right now, to be honest with you, because I like to have fun. I just know when to have it. I would say that was largely inappropriate. And Providence Athletic Director had to come out and go out on Twitter today, or X, and basically apologize for the entire student body. It's not a direct reflection of everybody that's in that building. But, hey, it's just, hey, you learn to go and do, and hopefully you're held responsible for your actions. I would hold the players responsible for their actions, and if they're not doing what they're supposed to be doing, then somebody else has got to. I realize you can't make wholesale changes with a 53-man roster. So the first thing that I would like to propose for future years, especially if we're going to an 18th game, especially if expansion, which has been talked about as well in the NFL, in getting beyond where we are now. You got to increase roster sizes, Evan. You just have to. I think that would be a way, at very least, to keep healthy bodies around on the roster and be able to have some versatility for that roster when guys do screw up, or they do, there's at least somebody holding their feet to the fire and say, well, if I don't do this the right way, somebody else is going to take my job.
Yeah.
Does that make any sense?
It does. I think right now, just on that point, the positions that the Patriots are currently short at, especially on the offensive side of the ball. I wouldn't say so much on defense, but offensive tackle in general around the league, the play is down, and there is not a surplus of tackles laying around, and it stands to reason that there aren't a whole lot of guys that are 6'6", 330 pounds that can move like ballerinas. Those types of people just don't grow on trees. So there's not a lot of tackles. I'll give you an example on a good team. Like Kansas City right now can't block anybody on the edge.
Yeah, right.
Like they have huge tackle problems, and they're the Kansas City Chiefs, the two-time defending Super Bowl champions. So it's not just the Patriots. There are teams with good offensive lines that are good teams. Detroit, Philadelphia, teams like that. But for the most part right now, expanding rosters or pulling Caleb Jones off the practice squad or whatever the case may be, like these options are just not any better. I know it feels like it can't be any worse and you might as well, but they're not any better. Vidarian Lowe, we've disagreed a little bit on Vidarian Lowe, I feel like, all season. And Miami was a debacle for him, obviously with all the penalties, pre-snap penalties and things like that. I thought he was better in this game, in terms of that, right? No false starts for him in this game. The holding, Drake May left the pocket, and the tackles have to learn now that Drake is going to move around back there. And so when he leaves the pocket, you can't go grabbing people.
Can't grab somebody
because he's leaving the pocket. So that's what that hold was. You used to see this all the time with the Seahawks, with Russell Wilson back in the day. They would get flagged a lot on the offensive line because Wilson's running around back there and they don't know where he is. They don't have eyes in the back of their head, so they don't know where he is. But I thought from a block-to-block basis, Vidarian Lowe was okay in this game. I thought really the offensive line as a whole was okay in this game, outside of Layden Robinson, who's a rookie and is in that developmental phase as a rookie.
Did you think, though, that maybe releasing Michael Jordan, as they've done now from the practice squad as well, after signing him back, first he's starting, then he's demoted, then he's re-signed to the practice squad, then he's cut outright? Wasn't that kind of like throwing the baby out with the bathwater? I mean, I realize they really like Layden Robinson, even though Robinson was one of, if not the lowest rated offensive lineman in the NFL last week by PFF. And I'm like, Okay, so why did they get rid of a guy who started all these games when they could have kept him on at least for insurance for the last 4 weeks? Didn't make any sense to me.
So I think that the biggest thing is that they obviously want to get Layden Robinson reps and get him experience.
But
and
to
then,
cut a guy? What if Layden Robinson gets hurt this week, God forbid?
Well, I also think that they feel like Cole Strange is nearing a return as well. And so when you have Robinson, Strange, and City So, you're now talking about 3 guards that you've drafted recently relatively high on all 3 of those guys. You're at this point in the season at 3-10, like just play one of the kids, you know, and see what happens there. I asked Alex Van Pelt last week, I want to say, what is there one thing with the pass protection that you point at that's like the biggest issue right now? Everybody loses blocks and things like that, but is there a common thread to any of the issues? And the thing that he mentioned was picking up stunts, post-line movement, like stunts, picks, that type of stuff. And I would say that Michael Jordan was probably the biggest issue on a lot of those. And so that it made sense that he was the one to go after getting that comment from Van Pelt that they feel like that's their biggest issue right now is picking up, those moving parts on the defensive line. And the guy that seemed to stand out as the biggest issue with that is no longer on the team. So maybe that was part of the reason for it as well, just from an actual film perspective of like why Michael Jordan was benched and eventually let go.
We've been told that, Cole Strange is working his way back, but with very little time left to go, is he going to?
I would expect him to be activated here before his window is up. I mean, Gerard Mayo keeps saying that he's going to play this year. The question that I have is where is he going to play? Because you're not moving on Wenu. That's for certain at this point. They want to get Layden Robinson all this experience. So really the spot is center. And I said earlier in the week that I didn't feel like Ben Brown deserves to get benched, and I still believe that. But I also believe that throwing Cole Strange into an NFL game at center without any real experience playing the position isn't very fair.
Yeah.
Snapping, line calls, like all the different things that go into being a center. I don't necessarily know if that's fair to Cole to then go ahead and throw him into an NFL regular season game, coming off the bye week or whatever, without really ever playing the position in a game at any level, college or the NFL. I talked to him about this a couple weeks ago, and he said that the only center experience that he has, other than people telling him that he looks like a center, it was at the Senior Bowl.
Yeah.
In a practice. Practicing in the Senior Bowl down in Mobile because NFL teams wanted to see what he looked like playing center. If you gave him OTAs, a training camp, a preseason to ramp up to playing center, that's a different story than giving him 3 weeks of practice and then asking him to go play center in a regular season game.
Okay. Well, all right, so good explanation at any rate. It seems to me that, you want as much depth as you can get, but at the same time, at the expense of another position where they feel like they need the help, okay, that's fine. But now the time is at 3-10, officially eliminated from whatever, and even though realistically we know there wasn't anything to be paying for anyway. But this is when the younger guys should be playing. This is when we should find out, okay, who's worth keeping? Who's worth re-upping if they've got a deal up? Who's worth, bringing back or, not trading, or maybe we have somebody with, that's worth a couple of trade chits on down the line. I mean, this is when you have to do your real evaluation. In other words, 2025 is beginning now. If it hadn't begun already, it is now. During this bye week, 2025 is already here. The process of identifying who and where it begins now, and then when you get into the off season, obviously it'll continue and build up until you get to the point of drafting in April and mini camps and camps and things like that next May and June. So with an eye toward the future like this, that's why I'm asking the question: give me one good thing, one bad thing, and one ugly thing that needs to. You can have a bad thing and hope that it can change or feel like it can change with more work or more time. But an ugly thing is going to mean no hope.
Yeah.
Okay? Born ugly, sorry, kid, you ain't going to make it. You're going to be an ugly adult, and, we got a pork chop for your neck, so the dog will play with you. That's ugly. Okay?
Do you want me to give you mine now?
Go.
All right. So I would say, just to to put them both together in the good category, so it's not all just Drake, right? Drake's obviously a good thing. Like we can all see it. We can all see the talent with Drake. A lot of upside there. Right now,
that's kind of low-hanging fruit, though, you know?
Yeah, like Drake right now, to me, is already playing winning football at the quarterback position, and the stats bear that out. You know, he's a winning player right now for the Patriots on Sunday in this game against the Colts. He was a winning player.
Too bad it couldn't have started earlier in the year, though.
in that game, so he's on his way. Right? It's not a complete finished product, but he's well on his way to being a franchise quarterback in this league. I would also put him together with Christian Gonzalez. I think the one beacon of hope that I have for this roster right now, no coaching excluded, just from the roster perspective, is that you have pillars on both sides of the football to build around. You have Drake May at quarterback on the offense. You have Christian Gonzalez at cornerback on the defense. So now everything else can kind of be built around the fact that you already have these two blue chip guys to be the guy on those sides of the football. So that's good. That's a step one. For a lot of teams, you don't get to that step, right? A lot of regimes never get there. So it's good that they hit on those in back-to-back first rounds, that they have those two guys now. So with Gonzalez, it's get another outside corner on the opposite side. To your point about the last 4 weeks, maybe that's Alex Austin. You know, maybe he plays really good football.
We've seen improvement in his play, without a doubt.
Yeah, he played well down the stretch last year. Played well, I thought, on Sunday. Let's see if it happens for 4 straight weeks against good teams. You know, Buffalo, Chargers, Arizona's a fringe playoff team. So he's going to have some tests. He's going to be tested. So let's see what it looks like for Alex Austin. Maybe that's him. You know, obviously you need pass rush. You know, that I'll get to that in a second, but the general point is that you have some pillars, some building blocks in those two guys that are at premium positions, that are young, rookie contract players, and guys that you just drafted in the first round the last 2 years, and that's the name of the game. Like, that's the way out. The way out is to draft well. And we can argue about the rounds 2 through 7 last year, and I'm not arguing. Like, it's not been good, so there's no argument there from me. But first round the last 2 years, they nailed both picks. They got great players with both picks. Good.
They need depth. They just need depth within the draft because of all the multiple examples of coming up short where that's concerned. All right, so we know what the good is. Did you identify bad?
So I would say the bad thing to me, to piggyback off that, you know, the draft outside of Drake May last year wasn't good enough, and I don't.
So roster building?
Yeah, like I don't necessarily think that those guys, you know, you said ugly is like, this has got to change, right? Like something major has got to change.
Bad can improve over time.
Yeah.
Ugly has got no shot.
Right. So I'm trying to, you know, on that side of the street, I definitely feel like I'm willing to give Elliott Wolf in this personnel department another draft.
Interesting.
But that leash is short, right? Like this is
it.
You know, you got one more draft.
Your back's to the wall on this one.
Yeah, and I will say that, you know, as somebody that studies the draft religiously and is big into the draft for a while now, one of the hardest things to do in the draft is it's easy to draft first-round picks, especially at the top of the first round. Mm-hmm. I'm not trying to give them zero credit for Drake, okay, like some people are saying. But at the same time, you and I, John, could have picked Drake May.
We could have.
And I think Elliott Wolf would admit that. You know, he's said to me.
Although I would have taken Jaden Daniels. That's just me.
Yeah, he said to me in the past in the interview last year, I think at the Combine, was like, that's not what separates good talent evaluators is not the first round. Mm-hmm. What separates good talent evaluators are days 2 and 3. Can you find players on days 2 and 3 of the draft? Because everybody can find players in the first round.
Of course.
So when I look at the draft last year, and then I would also say when I look at the draft in 23, Keion White's a good player. Is he great? I don't know. Good player, though, right? NFL player.
Solid. Yeah, an NFL caliber player. Yeah. You're right, but he hasn't quite turned out to be the world beater that we thought he would be.
Not quite, but I would say that he is an NFL caliber starter. Mm-hmm. You know, he's a starting NFL player in this league. So I'll give you the first 2 rounds in 23, but everything else, you know, I guess you know, DeMario Douglas in the 6th round was a nice pick. Okay? but you had a lot of other misses in there. Just looking at the fourth round a couple of years ago, they picked Chad Ryland, who's not even on the team.
Yep.
Right? Jake Andrews has not played a real meaningful snap for this Patriots team. He's either been hurt or he's been down on the depth chart. He's a fourth-round pick a couple of years ago in 23. Javon Baker and Jalen Polk, disaster. I'm sorry, just disaster rookie season. That's what it is. The two of those guys have 12 combined catches. I don't know what else to call it.
I don't either.
It has not been good. So they have to find a way to improve the days 2 and 3 drafting, because they're going to have another top 5 pick, top 8 pick, whatever it's going to end up being in the draft this year. And my expectation is that will be a good football player. It's pretty hard to miss that high up in the draft. So I would expect that to be a pretty good player. But what do you do with the rest of your draft picks is how you get out of this. I'll look at the Commanders quickly. Brandon Coleman is their starting left tackle. He was drafted in the 3rd round last year. Rookie 3rd rounder. Mm-hmm. Okay, Mike Sanstra, local kid, went to Everett High, Michigan, another day 2 draft pick, right? Those are the guys that are contributing around Jaden Daniels right now in Washington. That's how you get out of this, is by drafting well. So they got to figure that out. Right now, it's been bad. It hasn't been ugly yet, but it's been bad.
All right. So bad, I think I would concur with a lot of what you had to say. But what about ugly? What needs changing yesterday?
I would say to, again, make it both sides of the ball, to spread around the blame pie here a little bit. Trench play. And I feel like you're the same way as me.
Well, yeah.
The games are won and lost.
Won and lost on the line. On the lines of scrimmage.
I know everybody
totally
wants to talk about the receivers.
No.
I know everybody wants to talk about the quarterbacks.
Nope.
Football is won in the trenches.
Yes, it is.
The Patriots right now, offensively, according to win rate, ESPN metric, they are 32nd in pass blocking, and they are 31st in run blocking. So they have statistically the worst offensive line in the NFL. And I think all of us can just see that by the eye test. Defensively, the Patriots are 27th in pressure rate on defense. They don't get after the quarterback, especially when they only use a 4-man rush, where they're 31st in the league in pressure rate when they only send 4 guys. So they just don't get pressure on the quarterback. And as we saw on Sunday, when they play a team that can run the ball and lean on you, they don't stop the run either. So as much as I love Drake and as much as I love Gonzo, if Gonzalez has to cover for 4 seconds every single time because nobody's getting to the quarterback,
he's going to get beat somewhere.
And if Drake May's running for his life all day long,
he's going to get hurt somewhere.
We don't have a football team.
Yeah.
So something absolutely needs to change on both sides of the football in the trenches. They have to improve the roster in those areas first and foremost. Then you can get your fancy receiver. Then you can get your Tet McMillan, your Travis Hunter, your T. Higgins. I'm not saying you can't do it all at once, but you have to put real resources into pass rush and into pass blocking.
Okay.
That's it.
Well, I'm going to go I'll give you my good, bad, and ugly, and let's sort of compare and contrast here, because I'm not going to go for the low-hanging fruit on Drake May, because I think we all realize he is the future of this franchise. But in terms of position and players that I think have done better maybe than expected, I got to go with the tight ends. I think both. First of all, Hunter Henry is tough.
Yeah.
Boy, did he get his noggin knocked
a couple
of times this past week. And then what I've seen of Austin Hooper, I like.
I
think he's really improved over the course of this season. So I would give that a definite uptick. I think that'll make Claire, Clazy Claire, very happy that we were talking about tight ends today. But I think that's a good, and I'd like to see that maintained, if not eventually improved upon. As far as bad is concerned, I can't disagree with your choices over the personnel selections, and I think I'm going to sort of mirror it, but I'm also going to say I'm going to move the trench play, as you talked about. The line of scrimmage is how I had termed it. Line of scrimmage on both sides of the ball, that's been bad.
Yeah.
I don't really think you can see a lot of good out of anything from, you've seen blips, and you've seen, flips, and you've seen moments of brilliance, and you've seen moments of absolute, utter ineptitude, and moments of absolute, brain cramp when the offense gets a rare big play and it's called back because of holding, number 71, We'll get him in the business, doing one of those things, right? But so I got to put the offensive line and defensive line both in the bad. As far as ugly, to me, I'm not going to call necessarily for anybody to be fired because I don't think it's going to happen this year. I think that, there probably will be some kicking of the tires. I think that there will be calls made around the league, hey, would you or, could you consider or this or that? And, if some things come available, after Black Monday comes in the NFL, when all the coaches are gone, I'm sure we're going to have 7, 8, maybe even 9 head coaching jobs open in the NFL at some point before the 2024 season is completed once we get to the playoff round, right? I just think something has to happen upstairs. And I don't think the coaching staff can come back as it is presently constituted. I don't think the scouting staff can come back as presently constituted. There needs to be a change. Now, I'm not calling for Elliott Wolf to be fired. I'm not even calling for DeMarcus Covington to be fired because, again, as far as the coaches are concerned, look, I think they need to be given a couple of years to see if, where we stand and can they improve upon it. That goes for Gerard, too, and I know that people here locally are going absolutely ape-bleep over Gerard and how the Patriots should think about letting him go after a year. I disagree.
Yeah,
I totally disagree. I think that's throwing the baby out with the bathwater. Now, for whatever reason, Mr. Kraft ended up hiring him. Well, that's up to Mr. Kraft and up to Jonathan and up to Gerard and those that were involved there. The proof is going to come in the pudding by this time next year.
Yeah.
Okay, and if this team struggles with 4, 5, 6 wins next year, he's gone. He has to be gone because this is a business. And Gerard even understands that because he's been in the media and he understands that before, after he, left the team and then he got back into coaching. And so that's going to take care of itself. But let's see now if personnel can do their job, strike it rich with 3 or 4 draft picks, do even better within free agency to fill these gaps and give this team, not only some bona fide go-to talent all around the field, but also a little bit of depth. You got to have a modicum of depth here to be able to survive 17 weeks. The Patriots had their bye week here in week 14.
Yeah.
Jiminy Christmas, man. That's late. That's almost unfair. But I heard this week from some of the players, when they practiced earlier this week, Monday I guess it was, that it sort of said, hey, all things being equal, it's great to have the week off, but I almost wish we just went ahead and played through. Which tells me they got a mentality of, hey, let's on to the next. This one ain't working out. We're on to the next. And I'm kind of that way, too, to be honest with you. I'm like, all right, look, that's why I mentioned off the top of the program today. Look, 2025 begins now. This is it. Bye week. You've got, 4 weeks left in the regular season. You got to play Buffalo twice, which I also think is insane, not to play Buffalo before you get to the end of the year and everything's already been decided. Yeah. Now, maybe that's the fault of the other teams in the AFC East more than it is the Buffalo Bills. I would tell you that I think the Patriots have a chance to win at least one of those games because I don't think Buffalo is going to play everybody at the end of the year. They've already clinched everything that they're going to need to clinch. Yeah. So it's quite possible the Patriots would be playing the Buffalo B team. And they might actually get some kind of a, representative appearance, if not a win out of the deal.
That would not be good for the draft pick, John.
No, it would not be. But I'm just saying, the guys that are on this team and in this organization now, they don't care about that.
Oh, no.
They're fighting for the jobs that I just talked about because they know that, hey, okay, maybe I get a pass now, but I know that my performance is under the microscope, all right? So I got to play. I need to play. I need to kick somebody's ass. I need to do something in order to make an impression on people. And so is that looking at the overall good of the organization? Of course not. It's very much a me, I thing. And even though we know the old adage, there's no I in team, I would tell you, well, there ain't no me or we either.
Yeah, I would never advocate.
Actually, there is me.
I wouldn't.
There is me in team, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's true.
But not we.
I would never advocate for tanking or
Ladies and gentlemen, children.
All right. We get it.
I would never advocate for tanking on any level, especially the player level. I would never expect any of those guys to go out there and dog it and lose games. But, I'm glad you brought up the coaching because I probably should have included that in the draft and the personnel side of things because it's kind of all one. Yeah. Leadership is like sort of one thing to me with this team right now. And I do think, from a coaching perspective, obviously you hope that Gerard takes these game management experiences that have not gone his way this year and learns from them. And makes it, so he's not an error repeater.
Sure.
So that they get better at the end of halves, so that they get better at closing out games. And you mentioned earlier that, that's the league in terms of one-score games and close games and finishing these games. I saw a stat earlier this week that 307 of 381 games this year have been decided by one score, which is 80% of the games in the NFL. So,
but you got to find a way to get over the hump. We can't even this team can't get over the hump to be competitive because we know they're going to come up short in the end.
Right.
You got to find a way to go beyond that and then a little bit more in order to win those close games.
Right. So these close games, that's the league. Like these coin flip games, as I like to call them, where there's one-score games that come down to the wire. The teams that win those games go to the playoffs, and the teams that
don't, they're where the Patriots are right now.
Are picking the top 10.
And, Evan, it's been great that the Patriots actually been somewhat competitive, all the one-score games that they've actually been involved in.
7 of them, yeah.
Yeah, so, okay. But they didn't win any of those.
Well, they're 2-5 in those 7 one-score games.
Didn't seem like they won any of them.
I mean, that's not winning very many. Like,
it's not.
To your point, like
flip that to the other side. You got a team that's in the hunt for a playoff spot.
Right. And so this not that this might be a straw man, but like this notion that there's a lot of blowouts in the NFL, there really isn't.
No,
there really isn't.
I agree with that.
And so what you get at, all of this is that a lot of these coaching decisions that people like us in the media go over with a fine-tooth comb, a Monday morning quarterback every single week. All these coaching decisions when you are in a 25-24 game are exacerbated. Like, these are important decisions within the course of the game. And trust me, no one hates talking game management more than me. I hate it. I cannot stand sitting here talking about timeout usage and end of half and how you manage the clock and what plays you called on a drive following an intercept. I hate it. I don't have any time for it. But that being said, when you get down to a game like you did against the Colts, that decided the game.
Yeah.
And that's on the coaching, right? It's on the coaching.
Has to be.
Yeah.
Has to be. I mean, sure, it's on the players for execution, but hey, the players are only doing what the coaches ask them to do.
Right. I mean, just to go back to the end of the game on Sunday, you get that interception from Christian Gonzalez. They call 2 straight runs on the following drive. The first down run's not the big issue.
How long was that drive? 30 seconds?
Yeah, the first down run's not the issue though. The second and long run is the issue. Now, there's a chance, and I'm not in his head, but Drake might have checked into the second run. But it was a check situation where they were canning, right? They had 2 plays called, pass and a run, and based off the defense, he was supposed to decide if we were going to run it or pass it.
Right.
And all I'm saying is that in that moment, they might need to be a little bit more pedal to the metal next time. And that's what you hope that Gerard Mayo.
Especially when you're 3-10,
yeah,
or 3-9 as it was then.
But even if you're not, like, I have to imagine that if, like, Buffalo was in this similar situation, then in that spot to close out the game, they're putting the ball in Josh Allen's hands, and they're expecting Josh Allen to go out there and win them a ball game.
Yeah.
And especially when you look at the fact that really all you needed was like 20 yards to kick a field goal, to put that game out of reach. So these are the things that, like I said earlier, you hope that Gerard Mayo downloads this information, processes it, and then the next time that situation comes up, they handle the situation differently.
Right.
And if we aren't seeing that, then that's when you start to ask questions.
Matt St. Jean covers the Patriots, hosts the Pats Nation pod on CLNS Media, and also is a writer for Patriots Pulpit, Pat's Pulpit, if you will. He's at Matt St. Dream on X. We asked him to join us in the program here today to kind of give us some of his perspective. Hey, Matt, how's it going, bud?
It's going very well. How are you guys doing?
Good. Excellent. So I'm sure you heard at least a little bit of the conversation here, and just kind of curious overall, what's your take on where this team stands after 13 weeks going into the bye week, and is this sort of the beginning of the end or the start of a new beginning? I guess might be the two comparisons here.
Well, I agree with your assertion that this is kind of the start of 2025 starts now. I think that's going to start on the offensive line, where hopefully Cole Strange and Caden Wallace can get out there.
Yeah.
Your last 4 games here, I think they're all going to be very tough. You got a road game against a team that's trying to get into the playoffs in Arizona, 2 games against the Bills, who they're fighting for the number 1 seed right now. If they win out, Kansas City loses 1 game, they're hosting playoffs in the AFC. So I don't think they're going to be resting anyone. I think they're going pedal to the metal. And you got a Chargers team coming to Foxborough that has been tough and physical and very well coached all season long. That's won a lot of games. I think winning is going to be tough in the final 4 games, but you want to see some competition, and you want to see some guys start to stake some claim to jobs for next year.
Sure, of course. All right, so I'm gonna ask you the same question that Evan and I have been talking about here for a little bit, and give me a good, give me a bad, and give me an ugly for this team, at least at this stage of the game. Good, something you want to keep around, obviously. Bad, something that you still want to keep around, even though it has been very disappointing. Ugly, you need to ditch.
I think very easily the good on this team is Drake May. I think he has been excellent in basically all the things you've asked him to do from the standards of a rookie quarterback. Very excited to see what he can be. He seems like the real deal. I think, the bad, I think, in some ways had been, parts of the secondary and, I think the depth options in the secondary. But from what we saw from Alex Austin this week, I felt a lot better. And I think Kyle Duggar is kind of a player in the spotlight, a guy who's supposed to be, a captain, a foundational player for your defense, has not played his best football this year. And as you go forward into the future, he's somebody who you want to make sure is playing his best football and can be utilized properly. And then the ugly has been a lot of the play in the trenches, but I'm going to go specifically defensive tackle. They've been pushed around too much there this year, and I think you look at this draft with where they're going to be picking this year, and they might have a chance to really upgrade that defensive tackle spot going into next year.
What are your thoughts, Ev, on those particular choices that he made? I actually find the defensive line choice intriguing. Because 2-3 weeks ago, and maybe even some still now, to me, the top need has still got to be an offensive tackle for this team, but that doesn't mean you can't go out and find yourself a defensive tackle. And will free agency be the better route for either offense or defensive tackle, or will it be through the draft?
Yeah, I think the draft is stronger on defense, in my opinion, just from, especially in the early part of the first round from what I have seen so far in my studies of the draft. I am coming around to addressing the defense in the draft. I would prefer to do it in free agency just because I feel like there's more movement in the veteran market usually on defense. Like if you have a stud receiver, you're retaining him, you're trading him, you're not usually letting him get to free agency. Calvin Ridley is the best receiver in free agency last year. Maybe you get lucky and like T. Higgins is the occasional guy that will slip through the cracks like that. But even he isn't a high-end number 1 receiver in this league. So I look at defense and think that you probably are more likely. Matt mentioned depth at corner. Like there are some corners in free agency this year, Travarius Ward, DJ Reed, guys, Carlton Davis, like guys that play good football in this league at corner. So maybe you can go out and pay a corner. Gonzo's on his rookie contract. He's here. He's locked in. Go give a corner some money, to have a tandem there with those 2 guys. I think that's more possible. But if you look at the talent in the draft, it's hard to deny that the talent is probably more on the defensive side of the ball.
Okay. Let me pose something to both of you as well here, because it's a subject we've touched on, but we're kind of dancing around it. And maybe it's because we're all stunned because of it. Jalen Polk's lack of production this year, I find shocking. I thought he would be potentially, one of the finds of the draft this last year, but for some reason or another, he has not responded to anything. In fact, I saw today a couple of reports where he's one of the lowest rated receivers in the entire NFL in terms of, number of touches, in terms of what he's done with those touches. He's at the bottom of the heap. And I'm like, I was hesitant because, again, he's a rookie. But I almost threw him in the ugly category, and like, okay, look, the Patriots have had unfortunately an inglorious history over the last decade or almost two now of finding real stinkers at wide receiver, for lack of a better phrase, and it looked like they found another one. I'm not quite ready to go bust material yet. Talk me out of that.
Yeah, Matt, you can go first.
Matt, what do you think about Jalen?
I loved him coming out because he had great hands in college, and I think the thinking was, he's not the most refined route runner, but his hands are good enough you can put him on the field, and if he isn't open, you could still throw him the ball because you think that he has a chance to make the catch anyway. We just haven't seen that materialize. I think he's got a chance because receivers do take time to develop. It's a highly technical role, so, in an off season, you can make a jump, and if his hands issues this year have been just, adjusting to the NFL and kind of getting the yips, that can correct at any second. But you really can't go into next year expecting anything from him, just given the production. He's been, I think, one of the worst receivers in the NFL by yards per route run. And, you hope that he can get better. He's not a bust yet, but you can't plan around that improvement happening.
And if you can't plan on improvement happening, what's the point in, keeping him around?
Yeah, well, he's a second-round pick, so I don't think they're going to give up on him, and I'm not advocating for them to do that quite yet. I always give guys a chance, to pull out of it, and I think a lot of what's happened with him has to be noted is confidence related. Once you start to have struggles like that, it gets in your head, and I think he has struggled at times with that confidence out there. But with that being said, I wasn't the hugest fan of his in the draft, mainly just flavor thing with receivers for me.
Yeah.
I'm a big separation guy at that position. I think that's the skill that translates best from college to the NFL, is guys that can really separate at the top of the route or run by people. And when you have a guy that is predicated on winning in traffic, winning contested catches, those types of things are, one, very role specific. Like, you have to scheme those guys into your offense and find ways to put them in those positions. But I would also say, too, that the level of physicality from the college game to the pros is a big jump. And so when you're dealing with a guy that's going to be in crowds a lot and a guy that's going to have coverage on him a lot and has to box out or finish through contact or high point a ball or whatever the case may be, when you get that jump up in physicality, that skill doesn't always translate for every guy from college to the pros. So my concerns with Polk were speed, dynamic route running ability, separation ability, whatever you want to call it. And I was a little worried that he was going to have to be super reliant on the ability to finish through contact on contested targets, and that skill does not always translate. It does for some guys, but it doesn't for a lot. And so that would be my number one thing when you look at, what can the Patriots do to change the way they evaluate receivers moving forward. I think that's a major, major thing. It's not drafting another Tyquan Thornton just because he's fast, right? I'm not saying just draft fast guys. That's not what it is. It's watching these guys on film and the guys that can get open at the top of the route and can create separation consistently. Those guys, more times than not, are the ones that translate to the league.
I'm getting also some mixed signals as well on what maybe the biggest need for this team is right now, because I think we see some good in both sides of the ball, and I'm talking about on the offensive line and in the defensive line. But even though I think we're all in agreement here, the trench area for this franchise has to change. That's a part of the ugly that we're talking about here today, with the subject matter. But what comes first, tackle or defensive tackle, nose guard? I mean, what's more important, guarding Drake, defending Drake, or collapsing a pocket and stopping a run?
Yeah, I definitely think pass rusher in general is what I would call it. Like, I don't necessarily look at it as needing to be defensive tackle, because I do think you're going to get Barmore back at a fuller capacity next year, which should really help the interior. Edge rusher, I think, is a concern, because Anthony Jennings is a really great run defender, but he's not a great pass rusher. So he's a situational player, ideally. Keon White is not somebody that, is a great stand-up pass rusher, but he's a really good interior pass rusher. So he's kind of one of these tweeners, that has to play a role specific to the down and distance and things like that. So finding a guy on the edge, in my opinion, that can be a 3-down edge defender, that all situation type of pass rusher, which are hard to find. Like, those guys are premium players. So we're talking about paying one in free agency at the top of the market, or drafting one high in the draft. I understand that, but it's a really good edge class. It's probably the best edge out of all the positions. I would say edge is probably the best, besides maybe running back. Running back is loaded. There's running backs all throughout this draft. But pass rushers, edge rushers, really, really good. I'll give you 2 names that I like. First round, you got to watch Abdul Qadir if you haven't already, from Penn State. That guy is a problem. He's going to be a top 10 pick. He's excellent. Had a huge game last week against Maryland. Killed Ohio State. Killed Minnesota, who has a draft-eligible tackle, that's going to go high. He's a very, very unique talent. I really like Jack Sawyer, too, from Ohio State. He's a very good pass rusher, too. One of these guys that we've heard for a couple years now is going to be a very good NFL player, but he just hasn't been eligible yet. So I look at those 2 guys, maybe a first round, second round for you, as 2 guys that can play all 3 downs on the edge. That way there, third down, you have an Abdul Qadir off the edge, you have Keon White and Christian Barmore up the middle, and now all of a sudden you've got a third down pass rush. That's the hope, at least, if you draft guys like that.
Matt, what do you think? Offense or defense, where would you lean in terms of most important as far as a need?
Well, in some ways, I kind of feel like that's not the right way to look at it. We have to look at it as what comes first is free agency. Yep. You have to see who the players are that are available. I think that's going to kind of dictate where you go from there.
Okay.
We talked about, not always being able to find offensive linemen in free agency. That may not be the case this year. Cam Robinson, a left tackle who's been, about an average left tackle in the NFL, I'd say, might be available. You might get Ronnie Stanley available at left tackle. You might get Morgan Moses available at right tackle. You might get Trey Smith available, who can play guard. I think the trenches are one of your biggest areas of weakness. That's something you might be able to address quickly in free agency if, these guys do hit the market. You have the money to do it. I do think that defense is in some ways the higher priority, though. We've seen Drake May, as a rookie with a poor supporting cast, already be pretty productive as a quarterback. I feel like, if you can get that offensive line from 31st or 32nd in the NFL up to 20th there, Drake May can shine there. This defense clearly needs, a lot of talent. I like the names that Evan threw out. I'm also going to throw 2 more out there for you in the draft.
Good.
Michael Williams from Georgia.
Yep.
He is not polished as a pass rusher yet, but he's long, he's strong, he can play defensive end, he can kick inside for you. Really, really talented player, still figuring things out. And then Nick Scorton, he's an edge from Texas A&M. He played at Purdue, too. One of the youngest players in the draft. He's pretty mobile for a guy his size. And, Abdul Qadir I like. I don't know if he's going to fit what this front office is looking for. If they want someone with a little bit more size in that position, Scorton may be their kind of player.
Okay.
Yeah, Michael Williams is a good shout. He's probably the other, top 10 projected edge rusher in this class, or fringe top 10, if that. I would assume that Carter's pass rush ability is going to put him over the top in terms of being the top edge in this class, but Williams is a really good player, and he's a little bit longer and stouter on the edge, too.
Okay. All right, this at least gives us a basis. I did say, hey, this is the start of the new season, right? So we should at least begin to take an eye and take a look at these teams.
We're going to do a little draft talk if you have me on. You know that.
I always know that, and I know that. I know we'll get that out of you out of Catch-22 stuff, too. But, we're getting ready here. We're on the verge of, the college football playoff, the first 12-team playoff we have ever had in history, which I'm really looking forward to. I have to admit, I'm a total old school about college football, and I love the bowl games, and I love the bowl game system. I think there's something to the tradition that makes it special. But at the same time, I'm actually kind of excited about combining that tradition of the bowl games with a little bit of March Madness for football, with the way that it's going. And I'm intrigued by it. And I think these are names that we should all be watching during the CFP to where we see how these guys stand out against the big-time competition.
Yeah, I really like it for draft purposes. I'm not a big college football guy, like in terms of rooting interest, but in terms of yes, I know. That's why I said it laughing, because I knew the horns were coming. I knew that. No horns down, horns up here. Yeah, but I like it a lot because it shows you what these players do in the brightest stages. You know, like the big lights are on. It's not everything. You know, it's not everything. Like Michael Penix in the semifinal last year just has an unbelievable performance.
Yeah, he did.
In the semifinal.
He was amazing. And Jalen Polk was too, for that matter. That's why I'm so disappointed. He trashed my guys last year in the semifinal.
Yeah,
totally.
So both sides, right? But with Penix, you know, is Penix a top 10 pick without that semifinal game? Probably not.
Probably not.
So like those are the big games that you watch now. You know, Abdul Carter at Penn State, he'll play in one of these games. Maybe multiple of these games. You know, that's how you go and you look at these guys in those big stages.
Yeah. Matt, thank you for
another name.
Yeah, go ahead.
That's another name for the bowl games.
Yeah.
Left tackle Josh Connerly at Oregon. He's someone that may slip into the first round.
Yeah, your left tackle too, Kelvin Banks.
Well, Kelvin Banks, I know he got banged up a little bit against A&M last week, but I mean he's certainly a name that's worth watching. I know Cam Williams isn't we've talked about from LSU, and he won't be in the playoff. But at the same time, that's a guy I know that he actually declared physically for the draft this week.
Yeah.
So Williams is going to be a candidate for one of the tackle slots as well. Kelvin Banks seems to have size, agility. He's got good footwork and good foot speed for a big guy. I still think he's a little unpolished, if that's a phrase. And of course, he's this is just his third year of college football, and he's going to come out maybe a year early. He's a guy that most definitely could benefit from a fourth year. But the problem is that if he's ready now, get him into a pro system and let him adapt to the pro system, which is the way most of the thinking goes with players who are any good, right?
Yeah, Will Campbell at LSU too, an early declare, and both those guys.
Will Campbell, that's who I meant. Why did I say Cam Williams?
I
meant Will Campbell.
That's okay though.
Yeah, I know. I just flip-flopped the name, right?
Yeah. Will Campbell, is an early declare guy too, and they've had good luck, with Gonzo and Drake May, like both are early declare guys as well. So usually when you're that good, that talent comes out right away, and you don't have to stay in college football for 4 or 5 years to show that you're that good. So Banks, I like a little bit. We're going to talk about these guys a lot on Catch 22 tomorrow. This is our first draft preview show of the year is going to be tomorrow on the bye week.
Wait, weren't we just talking a couple of weeks ago about no draft talk until the season's over? But the season's over.
Yeah, so we're going to the bye week, and since I'm not thinking about another opponent on Sunday, I did some draft research this week, and Banks I like. I think that you can obviously see that he can move the line of scrimmage. Powerful kid, big body, big play strength type of guy. You can see generate the movement in the run game, and footwork and stuff like that to angle blocks and get the right leverage and all that fancy detailed stuff is all there for him. The one thing that I had a little bit of concern with on his tape was getting out to speed rushers and things like that. It's right on the line, right? Some of those, you talk about getting guys to 10 yards, right? That's usually the landmark. He's usually right at 10, when he's trying to deal with those speed guys coming off the edge. Campbell has a little bit of a different, sort of weakness, but I think Campbell's outstanding. His body control.
Isn't he a little bit more compact, really? I mean, he's not quite. He doesn't have quite the reach or the length.
So he has
that
shorter
Banks
arms.
Does, right?
He's
shorter
still
arms,
6'6", 330. So I wouldn't call him compact.
No.
But he's got shorter arms, which is what I was going to get to. Is sort of the concern with him. But in terms of movement, skill, body control, balance, anchor, power, just stout. You're not going to go through him. That he's got it all. He's excellent. I think he's going to be a really good NFL offensive lineman, whether it's inside or outside. But you talk about the length issues, and that is a concern. Longer armed pass rushers can get into his body, get into his chest plate, and then push him, and that does not bode well for him playing outside at tackle in the NFL. But I do like your boy a little bit there at Texas. I think that he's going to be a good player. Neither one of them is really Joe Alt. Like, they're not really in that category. Yeah. But certainly they would have been in the mix with, Fashanu and Talise Fugawa and that next wave of tackles last year after Joe Alt.
All right. Matt, before I let you go, who do you like in the SEC title game this week?
Oh, boy. You know what? Give me Texas. I'm not going to pick against the host.
Or this host either, right?
That's nice of you.
You're a good man. Hey, Matt, thank you for the time today, buddy. Appreciate you.
Thanks for having me on.
Matt. Good chatting.
You got it. That's Matt St. Jean, who covers the Patriots for CLNS Media, does one of their podcasts there on CLNS.
Yeah,
it's the Pat's Nation pod, and also writes for Pat's Pulpit.
So two places that I used to work at as well.
I was just going to say,
yes.
Evan worked his way into this realm, and
forced my way right in there.
Yeah, and if the network come and take you away like they took Mike Reese away once upon a time, then it could be a guy like Matt St. Jean coming in here and sitting in where Evan is. You never know. You just never know. It seems to be a proving ground for guys coming in here.
Yes, as Fred likes to call it, Clintus, because CLNS is doesn't really roll off the tongue, which I tried to tell them multiple times. Love you all. I mean it. I'm just messing. But yes, look, Matt is a good example of it too, and my boy Taylor, Kyle's another example. A lot of the traditional people told me to go to work for some small town paper covering high school football, and I'm not looking down at the people that did it that way either, but I took the internet path, the blogger path, if you want to call it that, and we all got to the same destination.
Be done. It can be done.
Yeah.
It just depends on your own perseverance and your own ability to connect. Really, I teach this to my college kids all the time. It's really about not who you know, but who knows you.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. I think that's a big thing. Nowadays, you can be a brand. You can build yourself a brand even without the platform of Patriots.com or whatever. I started on Twitter in 2000, 11, 12, something like that, and that's a platform. Just do the job. Just write, podcast, tweet, do it all, and as you go, people will start to recognize you and start to, oh yeah, I know that guy.
Got to be consistent with whatever it is that you do, right?
Yeah. I mean, that's what it was. Taylor's another great example. He's doing a great job, and that's he did the same sort of thing that I did. Just keep putting your head down and keep working at it. I think unfortunately, nowadays the old school journalism way of go to cover some small town high school paper thing, those jobs don't exist anymore. So it's
you have to dig really to find them, to be honest with you.
Yeah.
The story that I tell is a former student that I had when I was at Emerson a little over a decade ago, and he was a year out of graduating. He called me up and he basically said, "I'm having a hard time getting a job." And he was an okay student.
Yeah.
Good-looking kid. He wanted to be a sports anchor. Wanted to be an ESPN guy, that kind of stuff. And so we went out to lunch one day, and he wanted to pick my brain. And I said, "Well, what do you really enjoy doing?" And he says, "I enjoy reporting. I like to sit on the desk, but I like reporting." I said, "So basically you're telling me you want to tell stories?"
Yeah.
And he said, "Yeah, I want to tell stories." And I told him exactly. I said, "Go find a small place that will let you tell stories." So he ended up finding a weekly newspaper, which obviously has a website, in central Pennsylvania, in and around Harrisburg, Pennsylvania, and he ended up starting a podcast and an online interview with the high school football coaches every week. Grew their readership, over the course of 6 to 8 months. Ended up getting his first TV job from that job in the smallest market in America, in Alpena, Michigan, which is the Upper Peninsula, right? That's where it's winter, 10 months out of the year, basically. And then he took that in Alpena, Michigan, came back home to work as a freelancer for a station in Providence, decided he didn't like the freelancer out because it didn't pay all the bills, so he took a full-time job in Tulsa, Oklahoma, which, by the way, is a sneaky good sports market.
Yeah.
Tulsa's, because they cover everything college, as you would imagine, between Oklahoma and Arkansas, because it's right there in eastern Oklahoma, but they also cover a lot of pro sports in the area as well. And then he went from Tulsa to Dallas.
Yeah.
And he's now the weekend anchor at KDFW, the Fox affiliate in Dallas. So he's gone from market 275, whatever Alpena, Michigan is, to market 5.
That's incredible.
Yeah.
That's incredible.
But he started because he found a small place to tell stories.
Yeah, I said that would be my one piece of advice to anybody that wanted to listen is just start. Just find a place to put your writing, to put your podcast. You don't even need like a podcast host anymore. Like you can just post it, right?
Post it and put it up there and get, friends and family to jump in on it.
Yeah.
And frankly, I know that a lot of people who listen here that do Patriots-related podcasts, because Marina and I have actually had some of them on.
Yeah.
And we'll probably do that again in the off-season. We'll do a couple of shows in our off-season programming here, which we do monthly rather than weekly. But we invite some of these podcast hosts from Patriots Podcast that have caught our attention and that we know people will listen to kind of come in here, and we all exchange thoughts and ideas because, covering a football team isn't just restricted to people like you and me and even the mainstream media. Everybody's got a thought. Everybody's got an opinion. It's how you package that thought and how you package that opinion that will attract potential readers or listeners that really counts. And if you do it in an attractive, interesting way that people will go, you know what, that's not bad. I'm going to listen to that, or I'm going to read that again. Now you're cooking. Now you're on the right track. It can be done, and that's why I like, hearing from all kinds of people. We ask people all the time to call this show, and we get our regulars to call in, which is fabulous. I'd like to hear more and different opinions, regardless of whether you agree or disagree, because it causes me and people like yourself, people like Fred and Paul and anybody else that are in here, Deuce, it causes us to stop and think.
Yeah.
And to see another side and another point of view. Sometimes we do get so close to the forest, we can't see the trees.
Happens to me all the time.
All the time. And so it's always good to get a fresh perspective. And this is why I also like to do things like we've done today, which is ask people about, good, bad, and ugly, because it gives us perspective as where people are coming from. I'm not totally surprised with the answers thus far, and I'm hoping we get a chance to ask a few, listeners about it as well today. But at the same time, perspective is really everything here, because I think it helps us really attack what we need to attack in terms of figuring out what's right and what's wrong with the football team and the franchise.
Yeah, absolutely. Well said.
Thank you, buddy.
Anytime.
Appreciate
Anytime.
you.
Hi, Karen.
the one and only Evan Lazar. And he did say hi to Karen. We're going to get right to her. Hey, this reminder, Bud Light is easy to drink, easy to enjoy. Bud Light, the official beer sponsor of the New England Patriots. And don't forget, Bridgestone is the official tire of the New England Patriots. I'm proud to partner with Sullivan Tire, New England's headquarters for quality Bridgestone tires. Visit sullivantire.com to find a location near you. 855-PATS-500. That's the TPX toll-free hotline. 855-PATS-500. You can also find us, via email if you'd like to send a note. Don't have time to pick up the phone and call. Podcasts, plural, podcasts at patriots.com, or you can hit me up on X at JR Broadcaster, because I usually have that up looking at everybody else's feed. But if you hit my feed as well, I'm happy to answer a question that way. All right, so what Evan just did is he said hello to our friend Karen Guregian, who has covered the Patriots as a columnist and as a writer, a beat writer, for a number of years, several decades, in fact. I don't want to date you, Karen, in terms of how old you are or anything else like that. That's not my point here. My point here is that you're an experienced journalist, and she's a good friend of the show, and we appreciate her taking some time today. Karen Guregian joined us. Hi, Karen.
Hello, John. How are you?
Everything's good. As good as it can be for a 3-10 football team, right?
Well, and for the record, I am old, but that's okay.
No.
I equate that with wise,
Well, let's see.
Wisdom.
I've learned how to do that too, because I think I have you beat in that department. In fact, I'm pretty sure of it. And I try to think of wisdom. Yeah, I try to think of wisdom. That's the main thing I kind of rely upon. And so I want you to use a little of your wisdom in this regard, because one of the questions that I'm asking today has to do with kind of taking that beginning look ahead. With the bye week now being so late this year, and only 4 weeks left of the regular season, to me, this is the start of 2025 for the Patriots, for this team, this franchise. And, Gerard Mayo, I think, has even sort of, alluded to that as well when he met with the media earlier this week as well, and post-game after the Colts game this past weekend. And I think we all know that, because you're now mathematically eliminated, guys are going to start playing for their next deals, or guys are going to try to impress upon coaches or decision makers, whoever may be in those spots, with an eye toward next year. You're going to be kept around. We're going to move you around. You're going to make you expendable. What's it going to be? They've already done that with an offensive lineman and Michael Jordan, and who could be next. We also have the decision makers, whether it's a coach or somebody in player personnel that could also be moving around, because we just don't know. And you shouldn't know, rightfully so. You shouldn't have, absolutes down when your team is 3-10. So I'm going to ask you for something good about this team that you've seen this year. I'm going to ask you for something bad that you've seen about this team this year. And I'm going to ask you for something ugly. And by ugly, that means it's just not fixable. You got to change it. So which one do you want to start with? You want to start with good?
Sure.
Go.
Well, the good is obvious.
Yeah. Well, we know, but I'm kind of curious to know whether or not you. Yeah, I'm kind of curious whether or not to know if you have something that might be hidden that you've seen, that you've noticed, that you think is, hey, that's pretty good.
From Drake.
Mm-hmm.
Drake
Sure.
It's necessarily hidden, but a couple things. I mean, I think we've seen growth over the course of his 8 starts. I think we're seeing, I don't want to say advanced skills, but skills that, lead to him being a really good quarterback. His ability to throw and lead, throw guys open. Not everyone can do that, but he can, or throw it to a spot where only receivers can get it. I had a conversation with Austin Hooper recently about a ball that Drake threw to him, and he was just raving. I mean, it was like there were 3 defenders around, and there was Austin, and Drake, with Austin telling me the story, although I did see it, he just marveled at how Drake put it in a spot where only he could get it. And, he was telling me he's played with a ton of quarterbacks. He's a veteran tight end, and he hasn't seen that ability a lot, where the quarterback just instinctually puts it in a place in a crowd where only his guy can get it. So, those things, they might not be obvious to the eye, but, subtle things like that. I love, I wouldn't advocate quarterbacks throwing across the body, but boy, does he do it really well.
Yeah. I have to admit, that reminds me of, some real, gunslinger quarterbacks type that I've seen, in the past who sling it that way. And yeah, that's, it's
we
chancy.
saw Mac Jones attempt that, and it was gross.
Didn't go well.
No.
Didn't go well.
But he does it. It just amazes me how accurate he is doing it. And I think another thing, subtle thing, John, instincts that he has. Instincts knowing when to run, when to roll out and throw. Again, it might not seem like a big deal, but it is. This kid's 22 years old, and he just seems to have a natural feel for the game. I think he's done a really good job seeing the defense, reading the defenses, not hesitating. Again, these are kind of these intangible qualities that might not be obvious off the screen, but they're obvious when you watch plays back, when you go over the tape as as all of us beat writers do. And you gain even more of an appreciation for how good he is.
I have to admit that his ability to sort of, as my coaches used to call it, hey, Rook, how come you can't just pin your ears back and let it go? Because I was always too afraid of making a mistake. That's what kept me from being really good, I think. That and talent, usually has something to do with it. But he is willing to do that, and I like that attitude. So he's not afraid to make a mistake, and I'm actually impressed by that. I'm, I messed up here, but I know where I messed up. I'm going to try not to make that mistake again. And I think we've seen that sort of improvement from him this year, which is most encouraging, which is really why everybody should be, happy with what they've seen thus far. You can't be happy with the overall product, but man, get this guy some dudes to get the ball to, and you might have something here in the next year or two.
Well, that's the whole thing, John. It's almost like you want to fast forward the narrative, and it's like, God, like you can't wait to see him when he actually has a team around him,
Yeah.
But again, along the subtle lines, what he's able to do with nobody around him, honest to goodness, how he can, I'm not gonna put him into the same category as some of the elite quarterbacks, but make people around him better. I think he's made the offensive line not seem quite as god awful because of his ability to move.
Yep.
I think he's helped some receivers along in his ability to, put the ball in good spots for them. Since they can't gain separation, his accuracy has helped these guys who really don't create separation. The only issue here is he hasn't been able to produce wins.
No, and he does need some help where that's concerned. I do like his zeroing in on the Patriots tight ends in particular, which is one of those underlying good things that I thought of, because I think the performance by the tight ends, all things being equal, they've helped with blocking. They've shown us that they have pretty good hands. Austin Hooper, I think, has been a find, so I give him credit where that's concerned. So I would kind of put that in the good category as well. What about bad?
Yeah.
What about bad? And by bad, I mean, okay, right now it's not good, but it's worth saving. It's worth keeping around. It's hopeful of improvement. What do you think?
Well, I have to look to the defense.
Okay.
And it's kind of all-encompassing, with the exception of maybe Christian Gonzalez, who's another plus. God, the play of the defensive line has been startlingly poor. Getting blown off the line of scrimmage, not being able to stop run games, not being able to stop quarterbacks. The linebacker play, the confusion in the secondary and backfield. I mean, and opposing teams have picked up on the fact that you get down in the red zone, stick a play in there, no huddle, and the Patriots are lost.
Yeah.
Trying to figure out who to cover, what to do. Motion is another killer. Has been another thing that they haven't been able to figure out or get their ducks in a row.
Yeah. And
I don't know if, again, they've lost some good players. Juwan Bentley was kind of the quarterback back there, the linebacker. Kyle Duggar, I believe, has been playing on one leg with a bad ankle. They didn't have Jabril Peppers until recently. They didn't have Christian Barmore until recently. But I think perhaps we were spoiled when Coach Belichick was here of his ability to kind of hide his weak spots.
Yep.
Or still be able to confuse quarterbacks. We just haven't seen that type of mystique, that type of, doing things with the defense that confuses quarterbacks. because the way it looks, the defense is the one that's confused, not the offense.
It does. So let me ask you then the tough question here. Will there be changes in the coaching staff on that side of the football?
Well, I really think Gerard has to sit back and take an honest look at the coaching staff on both sides of the ball. Mm-hmm. And, I don't know if that means firing people, but perhaps it means bringing in co-coach type of people that can help straighten out and fix some of the difficulties. Of course, talent will help. Talent helps any coach. But it's just the problems we've been seeing, John. Fundamental.
Yeah.
Where to line up.
I don't know how that happens. It's inexplicable for this time of year for guys not to know how to line up in order to be legal, or guys to know that you can't jump the signal, or, it's a head scratcher that I've never seen before in covering this team for nearly 40 years as I have. I've never seen this of a team this late in the season. So it can't be anything but coaching or how they're being instructed how to do things.
Right. And again, it's mystifying to me. Just, again, the dumb things that they do.
And it just ruins everything, which leads me then into the real winner here, the ugly. What needs to be changed? What has no hope of improvement? What should be thrown out, with tomorrow's trash, that kind of thing.
It goes right to the offensive line.
Yeah.
They've ignored they've ignored left tackle,
mm-hmm.
and it's stunning that they did so, having a rookie quarterback. And again, I think Vidarian Lowe has done as well as he humanly possibly can with his ability.
Yeah.
But whether they were drafting tackles, they drafted people to play the right tackle and expected them to move to the left.
Right.
They signed in free agency a predominant right tackle, expecting him to play left. Are you willing to take that kind of chance that whoever can make that change without really knowing? That to me is that's ugly.
That's ugly.
It's an ugly assessment or an ugly way to go about your offensive line.
Sure.
It's troubling. Where, that doesn't seem to be high on the importance meter.
Right.
But the offensive line is that's where the offense stems from.
Of course it is. And why wouldn't you want to protect your best asset? That one blows me away, and it just tells me. The only thing I'm left really to gather is that they tried to do it on the cheap and they failed.
Well, if they continue to do it that way, shame on them.
Yeah, they can't afford to.
And they deserve all the criticism that's coming their way.
Yeah, along the whole lines of ugly. The performance of rookie second-round draft pick Jalen Polk has almost been inexplicable. He's not the same player that I saw, in the national semifinals and finals last year. He's not even close. Yeah. He was explosive. He had great hands, good speed.
Yep.
And we've seen nothing of that. And so I'm going to ask you a very simple question: why?
Yeah. Let's even go back to training camp, John.
Yeah.
He looked like that player.
Sure.
At least he started out, it looked like, watching him in training camp. But again, you have to put training camp into context. These aren't padded practice.
Yeah.
This is basically people running free and, with little, defense, let's say, with little opposition. But he stood out in kind of the early going in training camp, and he seemed to have a chemistry with Drake May, and that kind of has all disappeared. It's funny. I talked to him yesterday, so I wrote something about him today.
Yep.
A series of drops, bad penalties, lining up in the wrong place. I mean, it's like when he gets on the field during games, he loses his mind.
Yeah.
Which is weird.
Yeah. So why are we going back to football 101? That's what I don't understand. What's causing him to do that?
Well, perhaps you look at the coaching staff, the wide receivers coach, or again, something is missing. With Jalen Polk, and to a degree, Javon Baker, because they put him out there and then they have to take him out because he's in the wrong place or he doesn't do the right thing. And it's like, is anyone teaching these guys?
Well, if they're teaching them and they're failing, then they're not really holding them accountable now, are they?
Well, that opens up a whole nother can of worms.
There you go.
Because I'll just go back to our friend Vidarian Lowe.
Yep.
When you false start 3 times in the same game.
I know.
And don't get benched. And he didn't. But here's the other issue. Well, who the heck are they going to put in there?
Well, that's the problem. We talk about a little of that almost every week. And there's just not enough. That's the ultimate failure of this roster and the way it was constructed.
Right. The coach can't even bench players because there's such a huge drop off.
Right.
And again, when you're talking about left tackle or even right tackle, and the franchise you're trying to protect, are you going to bench the guy to send a message and risk getting the franchise hurt?
Yeah. No, you can't do that. Can't do that.
So in some ways, I think Gerard Mayo's hands have been tied by the roster that he's competing with.
Yeah, somewhat. We'll find out if that changes soon enough. Hey, I appreciate you spending a little time with us, Karen. As always, it's good to talk to you. I hope you had a good Thanksgiving, and good Lord, Christmas is 3 weeks from today. I'm stunned by that.
I know it.
It's time to get.
As always, John, thanks for having me on. I enjoy our chat.
So do I. And believe it or not, Karen, there's a lot of people who listen that also enjoy it. So I appreciate you making time for us. Thank you.
Anytime.
Got it.
Have a great holiday if I don't see you or talk to you before then.
Same to you. Hopefully we'll run into each other at the stadium here very, very shortly with a couple of games left to play. The one and only Karen Guregian from MassLive.com, at K Guregian, Guregian on X is where you can find her. Her stuff is always good. It's always spot on. The one thing that I've always loved about Karen, this isn't necessarily Mutual Admiration Society here, but the one thing I always love reading about Karen is that she reads and she writes about the stuff that I think about. She's spot on. And that comes from covering the team for 30-plus years, as she has. And so that's where experience really pays off, because she knows what you expect. She knows what I expect. She knows what she expects. She knows how to go to it. And she's been around, and the players know her. I mean, heck, she was one of TB12's favorites, for those that don't know. He would always, kind of like, in front of the White House press corps, always call on, one reporter first because you know him best. And I think that's what Tom Brady did when he was here. He'd always call on Karen first anyway because he respected her and her ability to recognize, her ability to write, and her ability to be fair. That's what I like most about Karen. So you got to make sure that she's a follow if you're following along, and that's why we love having her on the show every now and then. Okay, so I got to hit the TPX hotline here pretty quickly because Patty in Agawam has been hanging on like for flipping ever. Patty, you still there?
I'm still here, John. Hold on one. All right.
No, it's good. Hey, I kept you on hold, so you can keep me on hold for a second or two. Anyway, it doesn't make for great radio, Patty, but it's all right.
Hey, as I was listening to PU earlier today, I guess I don't make for great radio for some callers, so that's all right. I don't mind. I don't mind being the bad guy if I have to be.
Well, but see, I like bad guys. I like foils. I like people who come in to sort of stir the drink or shake the tree or however you want to term it. Because even if I don't agree with it, I like to hear other opinions because it gets me to stop and think and consider the other side and hopefully making a better educated opinion in my own right. Does that make sense?
Makes sense. And
yeah.
You kind of served it up to me, because wait till you hear the three answers I have to the question today.
All right, baby, go. What's good?
My good, aside from the obvious, Gonzalez and May, I wanted to stand out and be a little different, so I'm taking Alex Van Pelt. Because if you look at the difference between Drake May when he first got here, in rookie camp and mini camp and training camp to where he is now, yes, May had a lot to do with it, but I think as far as his development goes, you got to take your hats off to Alex Van Pelt for what he's done with the kid, and we're starting to finally see a little bit more creativity within the offense too.
Well, that's a fresh take. I'm going to give you credit for that one, and let's also go back to, even though you didn't win the game this past weekend, it was their most balanced offensive effort of the year. They outgained the Colts. They had over 400 yards of total offense.
Yeah, I know. It's just last week was one of those games where I just when it happened, John, when the Colts scored, I'm like, they're going for two here, and I'm watching the game with my friend Nick.
Yeah, and you knew that was going to happen. Right?
I'm like, how could you not go for it right here when your playoff lives are on the line? You're playing a team with 3 wins at their house.
Yeah,
you go for the win.
Sure.
But yeah, they outgained them almost 2-1, won the turnover battle, and still lost. And I was left there like, what the hell, man?
Yeah.
What do we got to do to pull out a win?
Yeah. I don't think this team is capable of that. That's the problem. It's just a problem right now.
I think they're still very. For as much crap as the coordinators, the coaches, Elliott Wolf, everyone takes, I said this on a previous call too, John, this is a rookie year for everybody, minus the crap, Everyone else in a big position this year, it's the rookie year. So
sure, yeah.
I wish people would be more patient and cut them some slack.
All right, so you hit the good. How about the bad? Yeah.
My bad? And I'm only putting a 1-year label on this bad.
Okay.
Because if we're at the bye week next year, I might be saying this guy is ugly. I'm going to go Jalen Polk because I think there is something there. I think there's a reason why, wide receiver coach notwithstanding, I think the organization likes him. I think eventually, I listen to Evan a lot. I listen to Alex a lot. Listen to PI. I listen to Patriots.com a lot. You know that.
Yes, I do.
But when Mayo made the comment about him kind of like being in his own head, I'm paraphrasing there. Evan came on the air and said, the one thing we were worried about with him getting open, he's doing. He's just not catching the ball. And I think it's sort of stacked against him over the last few weeks. And I think he just needs to settle it down. I'm hoping this bye week does him some good. And I said it a few weeks ago, too. I don't care which one of these rookie wide receivers it is, Baker or Polk. I just want to see one of these guys be a player.
Yeah.
Doesn't matter who, doesn't matter how.
Yeah.
It just doesn't matter. I want to see it happen.
Yeah. No, I agree. Somebody needs to. All right. Ugly. What is the proverbial ugly baby that needs the pork chop hanging around its neck so the dog will play with it?
All right. I went back and forth on this, and I know this is probably going to be very unpopular with some people. I was going to throw out DeMarcus Covington, but again, like he's in his first year. Let's give the guy another year, as bad as the defense has been. I'm going to go Kyle Duggar. Yeah. And I think if you look at since the last couple of years, the last 2 years especially, even with Bill Belichick as head coach, I think he's pretty good playing at the line of scrimmage. But as far as like the second and third levels, covering tight ends, covering the deep middle of the field, he hasn't been good, and I don't think he hasn't been worth the money that they gave him. And I think it might be time to move on from him. As much as, I like the guy. I thought he was, he was emerging a couple of years ago, but even before they paid him, I just thought, he really didn't look that good last year. He didn't look good, I thought, down the end of the stretch of 2022 as well. But, he had that big pick in Arizona, the pick six, or maybe it was Raiders game. I can't remember, one of those games. But ever since then, he's fallen off. And I don't know, maybe another team can get something out of him. Maybe we can get something out of him as far as draft capital. And like I said, I like the guy. It's nothing personal, but we at this point we got to kind of see what we can cut out for dead weight.
Yeah, well, that is going to come with a team. Is going to be 3-10 or is 3-10 and could be 3-14. We don't know. We don't know what will happen over the last 4 weeks, but it's certainly not going to be, I don't think it'll be better than what we saw last year. And like I said at the top of the show today, Patty, I'm like, I really thought this was a 5 or a 6 win team this year, and maybe with a break or two, they might be in playoff contention to about this time, early to mid-December. Before they ultimately succumbed, because I didn't think they'd have enough depth overall. Certainly they don't have the depth. The problem is they don't have the starters. So that's a part of the issue overall. But we were wrong, and they don't have the depth that, they've got to create depth. They've got to bring in starters. They got to bring in more NFL ready, more NFL capable performers surrounding, hopefully the offensive anchor and the defensive anchor that they have. And that's really where we stand. So, to me, I tend to agree with you. Look, DeMarcus Covington has had a rough ride over the last few weeks as the defensive coordinator because we've seen regression here, and I do think there's an issue here. But at the same time, because it's the first year for everybody in terms of the head coach, the OC, the DC, I'm certainly I'm kind of more in your camp, Patty. I really think that, yeah, they probably should get another year to be entirely fair, but the one that the onus really has to go down upon and that we really need to come through, otherwise he needs to, rethink his employment status, is Elliott Wolf.
100%.
You got to bring in the personnel for these coaches to coach up. I just don't know that it's fair 100%, and we know it's not a fair business, okay? It's professional sports. It's not a fair business. It's not going to be. It's a what have you done for me now business. It is all about, the Benjamins. It's about nothing else other than that. You got to make money. This is a professional business. But you got to give, it's kind of like Bill Parcells once said, right? If they're going to want you to coach the players, they got to let you shop for some of the groceries. And I totally agree with that assessment. So when you bring in the groceries, don't go buy rotten eggs. Don't buy
really quickly.
Yeah, don't buy stale bread. Don't do any of that stuff.
Real quickly before I get off, so you can get some other people on. He got the biggest chip, the hardest piece to get. We have the quarterback.
Yep.
Now it's up to him.
Yep.
You know what? I want to see them build up the defense, but while he is on his rookie contract, you have to do him justice.
Sure you do.
Start building the offense around him.
Sure you do.
So we can compete, because it's not your father's NFL. It's not my father's NFL.
No.
Games are won on offense more often than not nowadays.
That's
You've
correct.
got to build it up. That's all I got, Johnny.
You're a good man, Patty. Thank you, buddy. Appreciate you. All right, before we get to Mr. Baxter here. Eldridge, what's happening, brother?
Hey there, Mr. Legend. How you doing today?
All good today. How about you?
A little tired, but it's worth it.
Did we have a tough haul today?
Long ones.
Oh, where were you coming from? Where are you headed?
Right now I'm coming from Columbia, going back to Charlotte. Right now it's traffic time.
Okay.
And the other day we got a little snow, little flurries.
Ooh.
Ooh.
How long a drive is that?
degrees,
How long a drive
23
from Columbia to Charlotte? How long a drive is that?
If on a good day, it's an hour, about almost 2 hours.
Okay.
Bad day, 2.5, 3 with the traffic.
Being on the traffic
Especially
and the
idiots
weather.
can't drive.
When are we?
Fine,
Hey,
as long as they ain't snowing.
when are we putting together Eldridge rules of the road? We have to do that,
Mm-hmm.
All right.
I don't know.
That's for Marine.
But they keep getting worse.
That's for Marine. That Marine's got to get together on that. We want to put together Eldridge rules of the road, and that way we have some little reminders for people who are sitting in traffic listening to the pod or whatever they're doing. Marine, we definitely have to get to Eldridge rules of the road at some point, right? Like you don't have enough to do. I understand that, but I'm just saying.
It's on my list. I will get to you, Eldridge.
See?
Okay.
It's going to happen. It's going to happen. All right, so Eldred, give me good, bad, and ugly about this team because I know you've got some definitive choices here.
Yeah, good. I'm going with everybody else. Drake May.
Yep.
Yep.
He's
doing a little bit better. He's getting better than what I thought he would be.
Yep.
Like I said, I had him as I wouldn't want to draft him, but I got to give him his props.
Yeah, well, you told me you were going to go buy his jersey. You bought his jersey, right?
I already got it.
Yeah, you showed.
Remember,
you sent me a picture. Yeah, you sent me a picture.
Picture sure did.
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
A man of my word. That's how I do that.
I love it.
Yes, sir.
All right, bad.
But,
what's bad?
What's bad? Well, you go a lot of ways with that. I want to go the line, and I want to go defense.
Mm-hmm.
Matter of fact, I want to go with both. What's ugly?
Yep.
Is the talent level on that team with GM Wolf.
Yeah.
That's what's downright ugly.
Yeah. You would have said you would have said that for GM Bill Belichick too, though, right?
I think they're the same people. You keep drafting like Bill. I wouldn't.
The younger version of Bill.
Yeah.
You'd probably take that as a compliment, right?
He shouldn't. The way he drafting, he shouldn't. That's why Bill ain't got a job. You ain't got no groceries in the cabinets.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then I'm like everybody else. You have all this cap space. You have cap money. Cap money. You have this top of the draft, whatever. He won't get it right.
Yep.
I think he drafts like Bill, or he learned from Bill, and I think he drafts the same way.
Mm-hmm.
Because you got the same guys, and coaching wise, ugly on defense. Offense, I thought was ugly at first, but it's getting better. And then I'm like Marcus Covington. I can understand you, even in high school.
Mm-hmm.
When I was coaching in high school, if a guy go in motion, if you go man and you want to double him, the far safety on the other side double the guy that goes with him.
Yep.
That's That's elementary.
Yep.
The other safety cover the other deep end.
Yep.
That's elementary. Either side. And then if you're dropping, you just drop back in the zone or whatever. But you just don't have nobody confused or whatever. But they pros, they get paid, so they should know that rule too, because they had to start from high school to the league and learn the same thing.
Sure.
I just can't. It's just a talent level.
Yep.
And another thing I'm mad about is you got some guys on the scout team. I hear some people write about them, whatever, and like you got a 6'3" wide receiver out there already.
Mm-hmm.
You got speed. He might be whatever, but right now you're 3-10.
Mm-hmm.
Why not try everybody? You got some corners with some speed and some size. Why not try to see what you got instead of just looking at them practice squad and say, well, they just run the scout team and that's that. Why not give them a shot somewhere else? Because you're hurting in the secondary. Who knows? You might have a second guy right there, or you might have a receiver right there.
Right.
Jalen Polk, I gave up from Jump Street because I said I want A.D. Mitchell.
Sure. Yeah. I know. Although, I mean, I don't think A.D. Mitchell had the best game this last week either for the Colts, right?
No, he haven't little what you call. Matter of fact, my brother-in-law, he's a Colts fan. He told me that, hey, I tell you what, if I was GM, I'd trade you A.D. Mitchell for Robinson, the guard. I said, no, I ain't giving you the guard. I give you somebody else for him, but I won't give you the guard. Lennon Robinson. Leighton Robinson.
Yeah, that's one of the reasons.
Pretty good against.
Yeah, that's one of the reasons why they want to play him, because they want to see more of him. They want him to get on the job training, kind of like what they did with Drake earlier this year when they decided to move him into the lineup.
Yeah.
It's on the job training, and there's no better way to learn than on the job.
Yep, and what else is ugly? You only hit on one draft pick, which I know that's the major one, but that ain't the only one.
Yep.
At least you got hit 3.
Yep.
Out of how many people? 10, 11?
Yep.
At least hit 3. You ain't hit but 1.
I know. You gotta have a 300 batting average minimum, right? Minimum.
Yeah, minimum. And right now he got 0 with me. He got 0 from the other year.
Yeah.
And he got 0 for this year.
Yeah.
And then defense, like you said, you got some free agent corners, that can help help out Gonzo on that side over there. But it's a linebacker crew and the front line.
Mm-hmm.
You know, defensive line that's something like to penetrate.
Mm-hmm.
I'll pay somebody for that, about to do that, and then keep trying to draft whatever. But
Sure.
like I said, the ugliest thing is the GM and the talent level.
Yep.
And you saw this when Bill was there, and you got your chance to do something different. You did the same thing your predecessor did.
Correct.
I think that's dumb.
Yeah. Yeah.
The same thing.
It's hard to argue that. It's hard to argue that. Are you willing to give him another shot next year? You willing to give the coaching staff another shot?
I get a coaching staff another shot, but like I told you a while ago, Mr. Kraft, let me draft for you 1 year. I guarantee you, let me draft. Rest of the time, you ain't got to pay me.
Well, we're gonna go through.
Draft better your GM.
We're gonna give you a chance to make that draft, Eldridge. All right, we're gonna work on that for April and May next year, and we're gonna let you conduct Eldridge draft, and we're gonna see how it compares to what the Patriots do, and go from that point. All right. So start boning up on these guys. I want you to find me some, third, fourth, and fifth round gems, right? Guys that are lumps of coal. Guys that are lumps of coal right now that you can mold into diamonds.
All right, I'm gonna do that.
Okay.
But I like moving up to the top of the draft to get some of those guys.
Okay.
Second and third round, fifth, sixth, those special team guys.
Yeah, totally.
Yes, sir. But okay, you have a good one, Mr. Legend. I was good talking to you.
Always good to talk to you, Eldridge. Love you. All right, Eldridge, once again from North Carolina, just fresh off the road. Now it's, week 14 in the NFL?
A real woman could stop you from drinking.
It has to be a real big woman.
It's time to go around the NFL with football guru Russell Baxter.
Now on, your name is Flounder.
On Patriots Playbook.
Flounder.
And this reminder, Massachusetts is made for everyone. For leaf peepers, corn maze strollers, regatta lovers, pumpkin pickers, and anyone else you could think of. Come to where there's something for everyone this fall and winter, Massachusetts, where everything is made possible. Plan your trip at visitma.com. Good afternoon, Mr. Baxter. How are you, sir?
Hello there, sir. Are you recovered from Thanksgiving, or?
Yeah. Listen, I don't have any complaints. I mean, I had it good last week. I was in 80 degrees and sunshine every day. Basketball wasn't so great, but at the same time, I had no problems with my office every day. So that part was really good. And, of course, the day itself was nice to be with friends and family, and that part worked out. And I hope that you had a similar day yourself.
Very much. My standard line for 23 years, if you had the turkey and me, bet the over, and you won. So, no, it was relaxing. We saw some entertaining football for the most part.
We did, didn't we?
I think the Lions, I think, were headed for dinner and then realized that the Bears weren't finished yet, although the Bears found a way to finish themselves.
They did.
Unfortunately.
They did.
Now they have an interim head coach. The Cowboys-Giants game was competitive. The disappointment was the Thursday night game, Green Bay and Miami. Miami they were kind of a no-show. I mean, and I know a lot gets made about the weather and different things like that and so on. But they for a team that had won 3 games in a row, they were very, very flat, especially with what they have on the line. With the AFC playoff picture and so on. So, but I know the Bills were happy because then they beat San Francisco and they won the East 5th year in a row. So that's you're having a good year in Buffalo when, you have won 10 games and the rest of your division has won 11.
Yeah, no fooling, right? Hey, I got a couple of specific things I wanted to ask you today.
Okay.
First one starts with the Lions, as you mentioned them, of course, winning, on Thanksgiving Day because they're usually tough on that day. But now they're going to turn around and they got the early game this week and playing Thursday against the Packers. Are the Lions the best team in pro football? If they are, why? And if they are not, why not?
Well, 10 in a row. They have the highest scoring. They're the highest scoring team in the league, John.
Yep.
But they've also given up the second fewest points in the league, which I wouldn't say that's common. Okay?
Mm-hmm.
We see a lot of high scoring teams that definitely give up their share of points, but only the Chargers are giving up more points per game than the Lions. I think the Lions defense got a little banged up the other day, and I think that was part of the reason the Bears were able to. This is not an overpowering defense, but I give them credit. Losing Aiden Hutchinson, in the middle of the season, and they've still found ways to be just more solid. Aaron Glenn deserves a lot of credit, but this is a team that runs the ball, stops the run. They have a core. And the thing you have to think about, John, is the resiliency. That Sunday night game at Houston when Jared Goff threw the ball to everybody but you and me, and they still came back and won that game on the road. Mm-hmm. So this is a team that is like supreme. Think about this, okay? And I'm just going to go back to last season in the regular season, okay?
Yep.
The Detroit Lions are 23-6 in their last 29 games.
That's amazing. I mean, yeah. That's
if you include the playoffs, they're actually 25-7.
Yep.
Okay. Now, for those of us who watched the Lions, obviously, you're a team that hasn't won a championship since 1957. The only team in the NFC that's never been to the Super Bowl. Mm-hmm. These are pretty remarkable numbers. And listen, they had some good teams in the 90s when they got to the NFC title game in 91. That was kind of Barry Sanders. It was actually, if you remember that year, that was Wayne Fonts and a very emotional moment at the Silverdome with Mike Utley.
Yep.
As you remember. And a lot of people talked about that and so on. And they had some teams in the mid-'90s with Scott Mitchell as the quarterback, exciting teams, but never what we're seeing now, this dominance at times. And again, as we are finding out, and this is not a shock, while teams, and I want right off the top of my head, I want to say there's been 14 rematches so far this year as far as teams playing each other in the division. I think it sweeps 10-4.
Wow.
Okay.
No kidding.
But that's not a shock. Usually happen. But that doesn't mean that these games aren't close. And we have seen this all year with these divisional games that are nail biters. Mm-hmm. Okay. Even think about Pittsburgh and Cincinnati. Okay. Pittsburgh scored their most points of the season and gave up their most points of the season and still managed to win the game.
Managed to win it, yeah.
But it's a 6-point game.
Yeah.
Jacksonville's been dreadful this year, and they've taken the Texans to the wire twice.
Yep.
The Texans swept the Colts this year. The Colts took them to the wire twice. Both the Dallas Giants games were close. So we haven't necessarily seen, what about Baltimore and Cincinnati? A 41-38 and a 35-34?
I thought it was pretty entertaining.
Yeah, exactly. So you're seeing, again, Baltimore swept, Dallas swept, but Houston swept twice and so on. But it doesn't mean that these games aren't competitive. And here's a funny thing. I just talked about Houston with their 2 sweeps, and a couple of weeks ago, they got beat at home by the Titans, who won 3 games. Yep. So the difference between games during the regular season between teams that don't play each other on a regular basis per se, and these divisional matchups, I mean, it's very, very, very evident, which is why it's so smart that the final week of the season features 16 games and all 16 are within the division.
Yeah. Interesting. The other couple of games that I wanted to kind of glance at have to do with contenders certainly to whatever supremacy the Lions end up with, and you and I have talked about this before, but I mean I kind of tend to want to root for the teams that haven't had that opportunity to get to that big game or win the big game, and along those lines, while I'm going to kind of pull, if I'm going to be a fan for a minute, I'm going to kind of pull for what the Lions are doing in the AFC. Well, you've got potential for history again with the Kansas City Chiefs, and you've got the potential for history with the Buffalo Bills, maybe getting back to the bowl and maybe actually winning one for the first time in 5 attempts. They appear to me to be the cream of the crop in the AFC, with all due respect to the Steelers and maybe one other. But the Bills will go on the road to the Rams this week, and the Chiefs are at home against the Chargers, what may be the sneaky best game of the entire weekend on Sunday night.
Well, I mean, listen, even though they survived a wild Sunday night game against the Bengals, as I was pointing out, food for thought will be out tomorrow. Think about, we're 12 games into the season for just about every team except 6 teams that have played 13.
Right.
The Chargers still haven't given up 200 points.
Wow.
They're the only team in the league that can claim that.
Pretty good D.
Okay, and that's a big turnaround for that team. And I didn't go back to the AFL, but I was looking today, and I noted that since the merger, 1970, the Chargers have never led the league in fewest points allowed.
Wow. How about that?
Now, they've led the league, as we know, with the Dan Fouts teams and the Philip Rivers and, the big year by LaDainian Tomlinson in 2006. They've led the league in scoring, okay, quite a few times. But as far as points allowed, that's a different story for this franchise. And their defense really gets after you. And the way Kansas City has played offense this year, and I know the game's in Arrowhead, and right off the top of my head, I think the Chiefs have beaten them 6 times in a row.
Wow.
Okay?
Yeah.
But there's something about the Chiefs. I think people keep waiting for them to stub their toes, and it's the other team that stubs their toes.
Isn't that kind of like people kept waiting for Tom Brady and the Patriots to fall off a cliff?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And that's why when you hear about former players talk about the Patriots and they talk about the different things Bill Belichick did, he left no stone unturned, okay, in terms of preparation. And that's why the Patriots, when these weird things happened and they were put in these situations, they were not surprised.
Yep.
Okay? The defense and Malcolm Butler was not surprised when Russell Wilson dropped back to pass. Okay? I know people want to blame Russell Wilson and they want to blame Pete Carroll, and you certainly could, considering the way Marshawn Lynch likes to run through people.
Right.
Okay? But you can't say that New England was surprised.
Nope.
By that decision.
No,
now,
probably.
The Patriots got beaten in Super Bowl. Sure, the Giants did it twice. The Eagles, obviously, but preparation is why, and that's why Tom Brady was as good. The thing I admire the most about Tom Brady was the fact that he understood, at least, and this is from afar, he understood that it was not all about him. Okay? He was part of the team. Now, I'm not saying that Bill Belichick didn't drill that into his head. I'm sure he certainly did. Okay? But we saw that many instances where Brady didn't have to play well and they won, and yet Brady throws for 505 yards in the Super Bowl against the Eagles and loses.
And lost, yeah.
Okay? Now, there was the critical fumble late in the game, but that didn't take away from the fact that the Eagles moved the ball at will against them. In Super Bowl 52. So that was the thing I always admired about. Plus, even the year they didn't win the Super Bowl, I still think this is one of the 3 greatest clutch plays in the history of the NFL, and I've been watching for 50 years. When he converts that 4th down at Denver with Rob Gronkowski
yeah.
in the AFC title game, that's like standing ovation.
Oh, sure. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. Standing ovation.
Absolutely.
I don't know if I answered your last 2 questions, but
no, that's fine. Listen, I could sit here and listen to you, go on about that at all. I just the bottom line is that the Chiefs continue to defy whatever our expectations are. They get another challenge against the Chargers this week. I just wonder, and the Bills will get tested going out on the road, I think, to play the Rams this week. But I'm for some reason or other, I still have that little bit of doubt in my head, in the back of my head, about Buffalo, and maybe it's because of the apparent recklessness of a guy like their quarterback, or some of the questionable play calling of their coach, or whatever it may be. There's just a doubt, and maybe it's because these guys are 0-4, and you just feel like if they get to the big opportunity, they're going to blow it again. I don't know. It might not be anything more complicated than that.
Well,
I'm rooting for that game to where either Detroit or Buffalo has to finally win it.
Well, I will say this: Josh Allen has been a lot less reckless.
Yeah.
Okay, as far as ball security and so on, I don't think there's any question he's having his best year.
Yep.
The trepidation for me with Buffalo might be their defense. Okay, and that's not to saying their defense isn't playing very well. It is, but I think it's a defense that also you can move the ball against them.
Sure.
Okay. They're a team that certainly relies on takeaways. I'm just looking at the tied for second in the league with 24 takeaways.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
But by the way, John, just in case you don't get your wish, and I agree with you because I think a lot of people would like to see the Lions and the Bills.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Just from what you read.
Sure.
Around on social media and, other shows and different things like that. There is a fascination with two franchises that have never won a Super Bowl facing each other. And, of course, one franchise that's never been there.
Yep.
Do you know who the Bills play after the Rams?
I believe they would play well, hold on. Can I cheat?
Of course you can. Well,
I think. Let's see. I know that they've got the Patriots twice in their last 3 games. So,
correct.
So after they play the Rams, where are they? Hold it. Where is it? I had it here a second ago. Oh, they got the Lions. Duh. Right?
I teed you up.
Yeah, you did. You did. They got the Lions. So we get what I hope and what I know a lot of people hope is the Super Bowl preview.
Right.
And they're playing at Detroit. So, hey, listen, if the Patriots, I mean, look, I realize the Patriots, the way the schedule popped out, they got to play them twice in the last 3 weeks. But, Buffalo's already clinched everything. So I'm wondering, A, are they going to be focused on Detroit? And B, that last game of the year, shoot, there won't be anything to play for. I would imagine we'd see the Bills B team.
They haven't clinched everything. They do not have home field. Okay, even
I don't
though
know.
They beat Kansas City has the better record than they do.
That's true, which is why I don't know that the Bills are going to get home field like that. I
don't know either.
Yeah.
And by the way, to remind people, the Bills had home field against the Chiefs last year in the divisional playoffs
Right.
and couldn't get it.
Yeah.
Couldn't get it done.
Right.
And so on. But just off the top of my head, and I'm trying to remember what year it was. There was Thanksgiving, I think, 2 years ago when the Bills and Lions played, and the Lions were starting to feel. You could see them coming, okay,
Mm-hmm.
and I think Buffalo wound up beating them either late or in overtime or something like that.
Yeah.
And I also recall that Buffalo's had to play other teams at Ford Field because of snow conditions.
Yeah. Right.
Go back and what year that was.
By the way, I never get tired of snow games. I don't. I mean, even when we have to play them, I just think it's so great and so fun to watch on television.
Well, it's what people grew up on, okay? This is not baseball, and that's not a knock on baseball, okay? The elements play in what? Let me ask you this. What the hell would the ice bowl be without any ice?
I know, exactly. It wouldn't be without a frozen field. And by the way, you mentioned baseball. If we get Golden at bat, I'm out. I'm out. I'm not watching that garbage. I'm not watching that.
Listen, Chris Berman just popped in my head, and when they get, it's not frozen anymore. The tundra.
The tundra, yeah.
At Lambeau Field,
the frozen tundra. Yep, that's right.
But I mean, we've seen the great snow game. I remember LaShawn McCoy a couple of years ago running through the Lions and Buccaneers, Packers, and watching games almost getting canceled. Because of that, and it's not because they're afraid of the players playing in there; it's they want the fans to be able. You think the Bills fans are anxious to see the 49ers?
Oh,
what was it? $20 an hour and a meal?
Yeah, right.
The shovel?
Right. No.
By the way, for those who are not aware of how bad San Francisco has been the last couple of weeks, 73-20.
Wow. I would never have guessed that. Certainly not earlier in the year. Yeah.
73-20 to the Packers. And you know what's really ironic, John? The last time the 49ers went to the Super Bowl before last year was in 2019 when they lost to the Chiefs the first time.
Mm-hmm.
The year afterwards, they didn't make the playoffs.
Right. Boy, so they've been up and down like a thermometer. Yeah.
Well, listen, it's not like the rest of the NFC West has given them a chance.
That's also true.
I mean, the division is wonky, but the Niners are 1-3 in the division. Last year they were 5-1.
Wow! And now they're at the other end of the spectrum again. Russell, thank you, my man. I appreciate you as always. Talk to you next week.
I'd say so.
Okay.
And now, in some ways, I'm looking forward to the last 4 weeks for this reason and as well as many others.
Yeah.
No more buys.
No more buys, number one. And number two, hey, for the Patriots, it's the start of 2025 here already. So here we go. The evaluation process, if it hasn't already begun, it certainly has by now.
We have seen more than one instances, even in this free agency era, that teams that play late one year can carry that over to the following year, depending on coaching changes and personnel and stuff like that. And so that's why, no thank you.
Yep.
I'll just leave it at that.
No thank you. Let's see who wants to play. Thank you, sir. Talk to you soon.
Talk to you next week.
Yes, sir. You got it. The one and only at Bax Football Guru on X. Hey, attention, Pats Nation. The most nail-biting action film of the season, Carry On, starring Taron Egerton, Sophia Carson, and Jason Bateman, touches down on Netflix December the 13th, just in time for the holidays. Only liquids allowed. Blood, sweat, and tears. Catch Carry On December 13th only on Netflix. And, of course, our program brought to you by Bud Light. Easy to drink, easy to enjoy. Bud Light, the official beer sponsor of the New England Patriots. 2 quick emails to share. Our friend Classy Claire says her good, Drake May is obvious, but also the tight end duo, which I mentioned earlier in the show. The bad, some of the coaching decisions, pretty obvious there. Ugly, drops by the wide receivers. Yeah, I totally understand that. And our friend Aiden in California, all right? John, man, all the negativity in this town sucks, says Rick Pitino, right? I believe people are not seeing the forest through the trees. We knew this team had no talent. We're in the midst of a rebuild. I believe this was a year to see who the players they are only going to build with but go to war with next year. I have faith that this team will do right and sign and draft players for next offseason. We're seeing the disparity in talent. Now we can address the needs and coaching staff to be able to put the players in the best position. And now that I'm done with my little rant, I'm visiting Boston next week. Any recommendations of dinner places or breakfast places in Boston would be greatly appreciated. Well, look, dude, if you don't go to the North End and get some of the best Italian on the planet, certainly outside of Federal Hill and Providence, then you are sadly misdirected. And I'll just start with there. Seaport's also a really nice area to go to in Boston. But, I listen, me, I do the Italian thing. I have to admit, I was in the Bahamas this last week, as we talked about. That's why we missed the show last week. I found a Carmine's at Atlantis. They have a Carmine's restaurant, Italian restaurant, where they serve it all family style.
Did you check it out?
Yes. I went. I know. I'm in the Bahamas. What am I doing? I'm eating Italian food, right? It was good. It was spectacular.
Same thing. I mean, come on.
Yeah. I mean, you can't mess up a good chicken or a good veal parm. You can't. That's a staple of life up here.
So hungry. I'm literally licking my lips thinking about veal parm.
I know. Oh, I'm totally with you on that one. Hey, thanks to, of course, Evan Lazar, Karen Guregian, and Matt St. Jean for joining us here on the program today. Thanks for taking the time here to be with us and listen to our stuff here for today. Thanks to the Marine for putting it all together, as he always does. So the bye week, we get by this week. Next week we'll be back. We'll actually have a game to talk about. The Patriots, will start their last 4-week stretch here playing the Arizona Cardinals. We'll come back same Pats time, same Pats channel next Wednesday for more right here in Patriots Playbook. See you then.
Thank you for downloading this podcast. Subscribe on Apple, Google Play, and everywhere else you listen. Like the show? Please rate and review us. Listener comments and ratings help keep us high in the podcast rankings so new listeners can find us. Be sure to check Patriots.com for more news and more podcasts.